My name is Becca Murray, and this is my second vlog. I finished reading Moon of the Crusted Snow, and I must say my reactions to this story, that the one that stood out to me the most is hands down cringe. For me, there are several reasons for this reaction. To start, as a teenager, the thought of losing power, internet, satellite, for this period of time is crazy. Typically if the power goes out at my house, I still have cell phone service and to communicate with my friends. And for me, quite honestly, I'm spoiled. We've got a backup generator that automatically turns on when the power goes out. So if I'm at home, losing power is a very little consequence. Another cringeworthy part of the book is the grocery stores being closed and rationing for food. Don't get me wrong, I love to hunt, but I'm a teenager and most things I eat and drink I cannot acquire from hunting. I like potatoes and other vegetables, sometimes bread or rice with my meal. My mom sometimes has a summer garden, but we have never planted a garden large enough to really have much vegetables to get us past the summer. This doesn't even cover the snacks and soft drinks that I clearly take for granted most on the daily basis. Let's not forget all the baking my mom does. Pretty good. The thought of losing all this most definitely makes me want to cringe. I guess another major cringe-worthy part of the story is how people were dying and they had to stack bodies in a shed. I think we can all understand why someone would cringe over this. So obviously there was a lot of parts in the book that made me cringe. However, I did enjoy reading about Evan White Sky and his family. Evan, for the most part, was very reasonable and calm, not to mention very practical. He was very much plan for the future type of guy. I am far from all these things, to be honest, but they are qualities I hope to master when I get older. I can really relate to Evan when he is hunting at the beginning of the book, as I'm a new hunter and I really enjoy it. I realize that hunting will probably never be my main source of food, but I do enjoy eating venison and moose whenever I can. I also grew a lot of respect for Evan throughout this book, as he was always very practical and he did his best to help the community conserve their resources to get through the winter. Evan also seemed like he had a very strong relationship with his partner Nicole and their kids. He's also a very good friend, especially to Izzy, being that he is his best friend. Typically, all good stories have someone they admire, but they also have someone they despise. The author did not disappoint in Moon of the Crusted Snow with his antagonist character, Justin Scott. Man, I hate that guy. From the beginning, he was arrogant and pushy and just someone I would not trust. I just hated how he started off with a fake sense of respect for the community, only to try to take control later in the story. He's very self-centered and a bully, and just all around not a good person. I will be honest, I was not disappointed when the author killed off Justin Scott, but I was, however, surprised about how abruptly he was just killed. But again, I was not disappointed. Other than that, I think I was, however, disappointed in the ending of the story. I think partly because it was a sad that the community was splitting up and the power still was not restored. The ending definitely hinted at the fact that the world would forever be changed. And I never remember reading this book, but I feel like when I was researching which book to read, in the course, the description said there was a nuclear war that was why everyone's infrastructure was gone. Given the way the book read, that does not make sense as a possible cause. I think that would be one of the worst things that could ever happen to our world, a nuclear war. Don't you? Anyway, the ending made me a little sad that Evan and Nicole and their families were leaving their homes. From a practical standpoint, though, it does make sense to keep the sensible ones together and build a new life. Is it just me, or does the whole losing power, fuel supplies, etc. seem all a little unbelievable? Maybe I just feel that way because I take it all for granted. I have never had to fend for myself and survive in any way. I think because pretty much everyone I know would be unprepared for this type of scenario, like shown in Moon of the Crusted Snow, that it feels very unbelievable to me. As much as it seems unbelievable, I do, however, feel that the chief and band employees handled the food and power rationing pretty reasonably, in the beginning anyway. I mean, they had no idea how long it was going to last, so I thought they were being reasonable with the conserving fuel, power, food, and I also found it very believable how there would be most people who listened and conserved properly, and then others who would be in denial and wait for somebody to take care of them. I feel like this pretty much happens everywhere. There is always someone who is looking for a handout and someone else to bail them out of a predicament they were not prepared to handle. That all sounds about right. When reading this book, I did wonder why it was called Moon of the Crusted Snow. But then Evan began thinking of his teachers and remembered the Anishinaabe word, Anabi Gizes, which means Moon of the Crusted Snow. Evan explains how he thinks it is a term used for the peak of the winter when the weather is cold and freezes the snow. Evan was thinking of that as they had lost track of the calendar and what day it was. He was assuming that since the snow still had crust on it, it must have been the peak of winter. I believe it was sometime around February. Now, this is not what I would have titled the book, but I do not think I am very creative. I would have titled the book something like When the Lights Went Out. Overall, I found this book quite interesting. I think anyone interested in reading about colonization, about how colonization has affected the indigenous people, would enjoy reading this book. I think it is a perfect example of how colonization has negatively impacted indigenous people and has created problems with many losing their survival skills and understanding of the community living. This book shows both for sure. I think it would also probably be why the author wanted to write this book. I think it reminds people of the importance of coming together as a community for survival. Being there for each other and sharing everyone's strength makes people even stronger as a whole. Since this is a fictional story, it makes me think about this book being made into a movie. If it was, I think I might cut out or give a little less detail on how Kevin and Nick left the city, Gibson, where they attended school. Things I might elaborate a little bit more on would probably be relationships. Most movies love a good love story in there somewhere, and this book did not really get into it that much. Other than the strong relationship between Evan and Nicole, I found there was little else emphasized. I would maybe even create some more subplots with someone with some romance thrown in there. I also might make a little more of a storyline from Justin Scott's point of view. We were never really sure of his intentions other than to take control and bully the community. It would be interesting to see if there was more of a storyline there. I think Moon of the Crusted Snow should be taught to the whole class because it is an interesting take on how colonization has failed the indigenous communities. I also think it is a good lesson on why indigenous survival skills are so important and a great life lesson for everybody. As much as I find it hard to believe a scenario like this, permanent loss of infrastructure would happen, You never know when times will be tough, or who knows, war or anything would make us need to be more independent on taking care of ourselves and our families. A strong sense of community with cooperation from everyone is another strong lesson in this book. I think these are 3 important reasons why this book should be taught to the entire class.